The Two Travellers. The moral and magical tale of the two travellers is found in a 1200-year-old Chinese book, and also in Norway, Africa, North America, and Siberia. Its incidents are almost always very closely similar. There are two men, one is treacherously blinded by the other. Deserted, he finds out, usually supernaturally, how to cure both himself and someone else who is in trouble. He does this and is rewarded, and then, in his honesty, tells the villain how he came about his fortune. The evildoer tries to copy his formula, but something dreadful happens to him instead. In some versions, the African and one gypsy telling, it is a bird or birds that save him. But, as often happens in traditional tales, the figure intervening changes according to cultural taste. In the Kyrgyz form, it is a tiger, a fox, and a wolf. In the Norse, where no tigers are to be found, the animals become a wolf, a fox, and a hare. In the 1001 Nights, we find demons, as also in Bengal, and a spirit turns up again in Portugal. In South India, the secret knowledge comes from the goddess Kali, ordinarily a tutelary of destruction, but the Persian narrative softens the figures into that of a poor shepherd with special insights. In addition to folk versions, the story has a formidable literary pedigree. In Tibet, it is in the Kanjur. In India, it figures in the Panchatantra. In Iran, the classical Nizami embodied it into his 7 portraits of 1197. The Hebrew Midrash Haggadah of about the 14th century also has the story. Balkan gypsy versions are known, and it was so popular in Russia that Afanasiev's important collection contains no fewer than 7 variants of the plot. This account embodies the usual common features of the tale. There were once 2 men, one good and one bad, who went on a journey together. They were in quest of their fortune. The good man shared his food with his companion until it was all finished. The good man then asked, "May I have some of your food?" "Certainly not," said the other, and he became so irrationally infuriated that he plucked out the eyes of his unfortunate partner, robbed him of everything he had, and left him alone and helpless in the wilderness. The blinded good man became aware of some birds singing, and decided to climb, feeling his way, into the tree in whose topmost branches they were, to be safe from any prowling wild beasts, at least until the morning, when he might be able to think of some way of continuing his journey. Now it so happened that he found that he could understand the language of the birds. As he listened, he learned from their discussions that any blind person who bathed his eyes in the dew of that place would have his sight restored. Further, the birds said that the daughter of a certain king was ill, but could be healed by the use of a flower which grew nearby. The same flower had the power of locating water and restoring fertility to gardens. The blind man immediately bathed his eyes in the dew and found that he could see. Then he plucked the plant. He made his way to the place where the princess was ill, and having gained admittance, cured her. When he made the king's garden flourish again and found water which was badly needed, he was rewarded by being given the hand of the princess in marriage. He continued happily in this life until the villain who had blinded him turned up again, having heard of his inexplicable good fortune. The miscreant asked him how he had arrived at such a happy and prosperous state. "It was quite simple, in fact," said the honest man, "for he was one who bore no ill will. All I did was go up a certain tree, and I heard what to do from the birds, whose speech I suddenly understood." The bad man thereupon hurried to the place where he had blinded his companion, and waited. Presently the birds arrived and perched on the top of the tree. He found that he understood their speech. They said, Someone has overheard our conversation, for the king's daughter is now well, the garden is blossoming, and water has been found." They looked all around to see whether an eavesdropper was about, saw the bad man, flew down, and pecked out his eyes. The Fisherman and His Wife. Maxim Gorky, no victim of the sensation that world tales were merely irrationalities produced by disordered primitive brains, freely admitted that such stories opened up for me a new world where some free and all-fearless power reigned and inspired me to dream of a better life. This tale certainly emphasizes that there is another world or system which can cause changes in this dimension which are utterly inexplicable. It also claims, implicitly, that there are rules connected with such phenomena which have to be observed. In the oldest form of this recital, the Tibetan tale of King Mandata, the ruler conquers the whole earth and then desires to overwhelm heaven. Soon afterwards, he dies. A Polynesian connection has been noted, and there are many versions in Europe. Although the vanity and ambition of the king changes, in European hands, into that of a covetous woman, it might be noted that a check of folktale content has shown that more delinquent men than women appear in them, as a matter of statistics, and the sex of the culprit does not matter when it comes to the moral. The following version gives a good idea of the climate and projection of the story in Germany of the time of the Grimm collection, with terminology somewhat modernized. There was, once upon a time, a fisherman and his wife Isabel, who lived together in a little hut near the sea. Every day he went down to fish, and sat with his rod for many an hour at a time, looking out upon the blank water. One day the line went right down to the bottom, and when he drew it up, a great flounder was on the hook. The flounder said, "Fisherman, let me go, for I am not a real fish. I am an enchanted fish. What good will it do if you pull me up? I shall not taste good. Throw me back, you will soon catch another fish." "Ah," said the fisherman, "don't worry. As you can speak, you are obviously no ordinary fish. I will set you free." So saying, he threw the fish back into the water. It swam away, leaving a streak of blood behind it. Then the fisherman got up and went back to his wife to tell her the strange happening. No sooner did he get inside the hut than she said to him, "Have you caught nothing today, husband?" "Oh," said he, "I caught the most amazing fish. It could speak. It said that it was an enchanted fish, so I threw it back." "Did you do what you should have done? Ask the fish for a wish first?" she asked. "No," said he. "Why do you say that, wife?" "Ah," said she, "that is very unlucky. Is one to remain in this hut forever? You might have asked for a better place in which we could live, at least. Go again and call him and say we need a better house. I'm sure out of gratitude he'll give it to you." "But how can that be managed?" he inquired. "Well, catch him again, and before you release him, ask him quickly." The man was not very pleased, but his wife insisted, so more to get away from her than to catch the fish, he went back to the sea. It looked grey and green, cold and uninviting. He stood by it and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, hither quickly come to me, for my wife dear Isabel wishes what I dare not tell." No sooner had he said this than the flounder came swimming up and asked, "What do you want with me?" The man said shamefacedly, "My wife said I was to catch you again, and when I turned you loose I was to ask you if we could have a nice house instead of the hut." "Go home," said the flounder. "You will be pleased." So the fisherman went home, and found instead of the hut a clean cottage with a white painted gate. His wife was standing in the doorway and said to him, "Look, this is more like it. See the fine curtains and the brass bed, the bright shiny copper pots." In the garden was a large apple tree, hens, chickens, plenty of flowers and vegetables. "Are you content?" asked the fisherman when they went to bed that night. "I shall have to think about that," said the wife sleepily. About 14 days passed, and the fisherman caught enough for them each day. But his wife began to complain about the cottage, saying, "Husband, the bed is too narrow, the parlour is too crowded, the kitchen much too small. The garden is draughty, the gate squeaks. Go then to the Flounder and ask him for a castle for us." "Wife," said he, exceedingly annoyed, "I cannot do that again. Surely this cottage is good enough for us." "Good enough for you, but not for me, I can tell you," she replied angrily. "Have you no ambition? Do you want to be a poor benighted fisherman living in a cottage like this all your life? Go, tell him what I have said." "It isn't right," said the husband. "I don't suppose I will ever see the Flounder again." But he went down to the sea and looked out. The sea was quite choppy, with great waves topped by white crests. It looked green and grey no longer, but dangerous. "The Flounder may be quite angry," he thought, "but I'd better try just to tell Isabel that I did so. Flounder, flounder in the sea, hither quickly come to me, for my wife dear Isabel wishes what I scarce can tell." "What do you want now?" asked the Flounder, swimming up with some difficulty. "Oh," said the man, half frightened, "she wants to live in a great big castle." "Go home," said the fish, "she has it already." The fisherman went away, and could scarce believe his eyes. Where the cottage had been was a great stone castle with turrets and battlements, slits for arrows, and 50 stone steps. His wife called to him from the top of the stairs, and taking him by the hand, said, "Now let us walk about in our new home." So they walked about in the great panelled hall, with tapestries hanging everywhere, and huge paintings of ancestors. There were gigantic oak tables, and silver, glass, linen, candelabras of Venetian work, rooms of treasure, many servants scurrying hither and thither. There were crystal-looking glasses, priceless carpets from the East, valuable hounds sitting by the log fire. Outside there were stables, cowsheds, dovecotes of gigantic size, wagons, flowers, and fruit trees. There were meadows full of deer, and oxen in the pasture, fat sheep in pens. "Is this not charming?" said the wife. "I hope you will be satisfied for life with all this style," said the bewildered fisherman, looking everywhere for his rod. "We shall talk about that some other time," said his wife. All went well for about 2 or 3 weeks. Then the wife said to her husband, "Look from this window. Would it not be fine if you and I were king and queen of all the land?" "Woman, you must be mad," said he. "Have you not got enough?" "Go," she insisted. "Tell the Flounder we wish to be king and queen." "I do not want to be king," he shouted. "I am a fisherman." "Be what you like," she said. "Just go and tell the Flounder that I want to be queen. I must be queen." He turned away and went down to the sea. Stupefied, he looked out at the water. It was quite black, and when it splashed up it smelled most disagreeably. But he stood still and repeated as before, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, hither quickly come to me, for my wife dear Isabel wishes what I cannot tell." "What does she want now?" asked the Flounder, swimming up with some difficulty. "Ah," said he, "she wants to be queen now." "Go home," said the Flounder. "She is queen already." The man returned home, and when he came nearer to his castle he saw that it had become much larger, and that it had flags flying from the turrets, and soldiers on horseback standing guard everywhere. Before the gate was a herald with a blaring trumpet, and there were other soldiers with kettle drums and fifes. When he went into the palace he saw that there were items made of gold everywhere, plates and bowls set with precious gems. Magnificent curtains fringed with gold hung at all the windows. Tables were made of marble and gold. Serious-looking courtiers strolled through the halls, deep in conversation. He went into the great court apartments, and there sat his wife, with fountains playing jets of wine instead of water, upon a throne of gold and diamonds. She had a crown upon her head, glittering with rubies and pearls, her hair in a net of gold. On her neck was a golden chain, in her hands a golden orb and sceptre. At each side stood 6 young pages, each dressed more gorgeously than the last. The fisherman went up to his wife and said, "Ah, Isabel, I see you are the queen now." "Yes," she said, "I am queen." "Do you like being queen?" he asked. "Now there is nothing else you can be." "Oh, yes, there is," she snapped. "Go to the Flounder right away and tell him that I must be, and shall be, Pope." "Oh, wife, wife," said he, "you cannot be Pope. The Pope is the head of Christendom, and there is only one Pope. The Flounder cannot make you that." "I will be Pope," said she, and he went off to find the Flounder. When he came to the shore, the sea was running extremely high, and the sky was so black he was quite terrified. The fisherman could hardly make himself heard above the sound of the mountainous waves which were breaking upon the rocks. He cried, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, quickly, quickly, come to me. My dear wife, Queen Isabel, wishes what I dare not tell." "What now?" asked the Flounder. "She wants to be Pope," said the man. "Go home and find her so," was the reply. So he went back and found a huge church, in which his wife was sitting upon a much higher throne than before, with 2 rows of candles on each side, and before her on footstools were kings, queens, and princes kneeling. "Wife," said he, "be content. Since you are Pope, you cannot be anything higher." "I will consider that," she said haughtily, and turned her head away. She rose very early next day, and looked out of the window, watching the sun rising. "Why should I not make the sun rise and set?" she asked herself. So she roused her poor husband and said to him, "I have thought of something. Go, tell the Flounder that I want to make the sun rise and set. Go quickly, I must be the ruler of the universe." Stumbling and falling, the fisherman made his way to the sea. There a tremendous storm was raging. Ships and boats of all shapes and sizes were tossing about in all directions. Then he shouted out, though the wind whipped his words away, and he could not hear the sound of his own voice. "Flounder, flounder in the sea, quickly, quickly come to me, for my wife Pope Isabel wishes what I dare not tell." "What would she have now?" asked the fish. "She wants to be ruler of the universe," shouted the fisherman. "Return, and find her back in her hovel of a hut," said the Flounder, and disappeared. And in that hut the fisherman and his wife remained for the remainder of their lives. Impossible Judgement. Nobody can be sure whether any given tale originates with the written form and has from there passed into folklore, or the other way about. Some traditional tales are actually presented as true stories, even in modern biographies. Among these is this one, claimed to be an incident in the life of Lord Chancellor Egerton of England, died 1617, and also attributed to a case of Attorney General William Noy, died 1634. Yet the same story is found in the writings of Valerius Maximus, nearly 2,000 years ago. It is attributed to Demosthenes, who died in 322 BC, and reappears, according to a cardinal, as having actually happened in the Italian family of Lambertini in the 14th century. Here is a version taken from the novel by Lesage, The History of Vanillo Gonzalez, supposedly from a Spanish original, published in 1734, 2,000 years after its first attribution. Presumably the modern writers had not heard of the Judgement scene in Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. Three merchants, named Charles Azarini, Peter Scanati, and Jerome Avellino, went to the house of a venerable citizen of Palermo, Sicily, taking with them a notary public and 10,000 gold pieces. The old man agreed in writing to look after the money and not to give it up to any one of them unless in the presence of the two others. The agreement was duly notarized. The money was carefully looked after until, some months later, Avellino knocked on the door during the night, most urgently, saying that the money was needed. Azarini, Scanati, and he said, had an opportunity of buying a valuable cargo if they could move quickly. "But you seem to forget that I cannot give you the money, according to our contract, unless all of you are present," said the old man. "I do indeed remember it," said Avellino, "but Azarini and Scanati are ill and cannot come. But they are in agreement that you yield the money to me. Surely you remember that you have known me for a long time and that I am an honest man." The old man was at first uncertain what he should do, but eventually he overcame his fears and parted with the gold. Avellino, of course, made off with the money, and thenceforward was nowhere to be found. No sooner did Azarini and Scanati hear what had happened than they brought a suit against the old man for the recovery of their money. The case was heard by the Duke of Osuna, governor of Sicily, who, after the plaintiffs had been heard, asked the ancient, whose name was Giannattino, what answer he had to the charge. "None whatever, sir." Now the Duke said, "He has no answer to make. He accepts that he owes you 10,000 crowns, and he is ready to do so. By the terms of the agreement, however, he can only pay you if and when all three of you are present together. Therefore bring Avellino into court, and the money shall be paid to you."